Hello, my friends. This is part 2 in a series of videos on whether fire, earth, air, and water really are related to the extraversion-introversion qualities that astrologers consistently ascribe to them. And this is the second additional test I did to investigate this. And what I did in the second way of analyzing the data is I shuffled the scores. In the first test that I did, using a control group, I shuffled the birth data. This is what we often do in astrology to create a control group. We create this shuffled control group of the people. Now I decided, well, why don't I just randomize the scores? So I took the scores, like suppose the first person's name is Sally, and she got a 20, very extroverted. So, and then maybe Jane got a 5, she's very introverted. So I just scramble up, I randomize the scores, and now Sally gets a 5 and Jane gets a 20. Just randomly assign the scores and see what happens. And so, for example, if Alice has a score of 5, Barbara 10, Charles 15, we randomize it. Now maybe Alice gets the 15, Barbara the 5, and Charles the 10. And then we convert the E-scores to different scores. So Alice, her real score was 5 in the randomized group. The control group, she's 15, so she's gone up by 10. Barbara went down by 5, Charles went down by 5. The total will always be 0. So we scramble up the scores, we randomize them. And, well, in this case, I didn't use a control group. What I did, I just ran the ANOVA again on the different scores. Just another way of modeling the data and analyzing it. An ANOVA was run so that the randomization of scores is better and the power of the test is high. There are many ways to analyze data. So anyways, this is just another way to model and analyze the data. And I just listed the p-values for zodiac signs and for elements. So what this is saying is that if you create in a sense, there is a control group. We create a randomized scores, and then we analyze those different scores, and we find that there's no new information. The outer planets, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, do have statistically significant results, extremely statistically significant, clearly not by chance. Outer signs do correlate with extraversion-introversion, and that is due to the fact that the outer planets move very slowly through the signs. So older people are going to tend to have outer planets in a particular sign, and younger people in a different sign. And the older you are, the more introverted you are. So this has been repeated over and over, extremely consistent. For people in different countries, people in different ages, situations, older people are more introverted, and we confirm that. Again, it shows the consistency of results that you get from this Eysenck inventory. Older people are more introverted. So that's true, confirmed by the zodiac signs. But the faster moving planets that are not related to age, p-values are nowhere near 0.05, not even close. Just look at them. You can stop this if you want and, pause this and look at all these p-values that are nowhere near. Remember, 1 out of 20 by chance should reach the 0.05. We've got over 20 cases here, so it's just totally random. Confirms another way of analyzing the data, analyzing it different ways, confirming that the fire, earth, air, and water is just not working very well in this research. Now, another criticism was, so those were two ways of addressing the control group issue. The first one was the more direct, and then the second one is another way of doing it. Another criticism or suggestion was that, as I said, older people are more introverted. That was already taken care of. I'm not sure why some of the researchers are saying there's a problem with age. There's no problem. ANCOVA takes care of that. ANCOVA controls for that variable. It eliminates age as a problem. But nevertheless, I want to retest. It never hurts to test it another way and analyze data in another form. So I removed the younger people. And this is what one of the people suggested, remove the younger people because they score differently. Well, ANCOVA already took care of that. But if you insist, okay, let's do it. And I did only people who are 31 years or older. And I ran the t-test again. And then I ran it a second time with 29 years or older. So I did it in several different ways. I went down to 29 years so that the number of people would be greater. That gives us more power. And then I also did 31 to just get, even older. Just, if you go down, if you take only people who are 31 years or older, you have a smaller number of people, obviously, because these were students in undergraduate school. Most of them were in their 20s. You have a smaller group, it's hard to get statistical significance with a small group. So then I also tried 29 or older, giving every possibility that I can. So at 31 years or older, there are 161. That's a good number of people. That's good. That's enough to detect fairly small differences. So let's look at the results of looking at 161 people who are at least 31 years old. And here are the results. And there was a surprise. Oh, I didn't expect this. This is why it's good to go back and look. A surprise I put in yellow. When I analyze the data this way, I'm not finding anything with fire, earth, air, and water, but what we found is that the sign of Mars was statistically significant on a two-sided test, 0.04. That means on the one-sided test that a lot of other astrologers use, it's 0.02. That's impressive. In other words, analyzing the data this way shows that the sign of Mars is related to introversion and extraversion. Okay, it wasn't quite statistically significant looking at it other ways. So it ends up I was wrong. You got to be humble in this stuff. I was saying, why do I have to analyze this data? ANCOVA already took care of this. But it did show something interesting. So that criticism was actually a good criticism, or a good suggestion, I should call it, that I didn't think was so smart, but someone else did, and so I did it. There is some indication that the sign of Mars is related to introversion and extraversion. It's the only one. Because it's the only one, it could just be a random fluctuation. But the next thing we like to do is, what sign is it? If it's Mars in Cancer or Taurus, making you extroverted, then if you're an astrologer, you think, well, that's just a random fluctuation. But what if it was like Sagittarius? That would be the most extroverted sign. Then you would think, whoa, maybe Mars in Sagittarius does incline to extroversion. So let's see. I ran the Tukey HSD. This is the technique that finds each sign comparison. On the left, it says things like 0201. 2 means Taurus, 1 means Aries. So this is Taurus to Aries. What's going, if we compare the people with Mars and Taurus to the people in Mars and Aries, we find that the Mars and Taurus is actually not significantly. If it's significant, it will be completely to the right of this middle dashed line. So it's not statistically significant. It's probably a random fluctuation, but it is interesting that Mars and Taurus was slightly more extroverted than Mars and Aries, contradicting the astrological ideas. But there are some that are statistically significant. Look at this one over here. If you can see my cursor. Well, I'll show you on the next slide. I highlight it. There they are. I highlight it. These are the ones that are either statistically significant at 0.05, 95% confidence level, or close to it. They're 95% if they don't cross this middle line. So this is Sagittarius to Aries. This is telling us that Sagittarius is more Mars in Sagittarius. Only Mars. Mars in Sagittarius is more extroverted than Mars in Aries. Ooh, that's Sagittarius. The one that we thought, according to astrology theory, would be Extroverted. This one here is a Leo to Taurus, but I want to go down to the other ones. This one is Sagittarius to Taurus, nowhere near statistically significant, but it is in the right direction. This one is almost statistically significant, almost 95% confidence, and it's Sagittarius to Gemini, 9 to 3. Sagittarius is more extroverted than Aries and Gemini. Let's go down to the next one. This is Leo to Cancer. Weird. Leo's more introverted than Cancer, but it might be a random fluctuation. And this one is Sagittarius to Leo. Oh my God. 3 times Mars in Sagittarius is more extroverted than other signs, and this one does have 95%. The whole line is to the right. Next one, Sagittarius to Libra. Sagittarius is more extroverted than what do I say so far? Aries, Gemini, Leo, Libra. It's over and over again. Let's look at the next one. Sagittarius to Scorpio. Not quite 95% confidence, but it's way to the right. Next one. Capricorn to Sagittarius. Capricorn's more introverted. It's putting them in a sorted order of numbers. This is the same as saying Sagittarius is more extroverted than Capricorn, and Sagittarius is more extroverted than Aquarius. Over and over again, Sagittarius is more extroverted than the other signs. Mars in Sagittarius is the only thing that shows up in this research that I've done that suggests maybe there's something there. Maybe this is not a random fluctuation. Wow, Mars is the planet of action. Sagittarius is the most extroverted. Maybe this fire, earth, air, and water is derailing us from what's going on, and we should just look at individual signs. This is similar to what Robert Curry found in his research, that the fire, earth, air, and water is not that simple. In his research, he found fire was extroverted, but air is not extroverted. Okay, some contradictions there. And then we'll talk about his research later, but the bottom line is that we are again finding that the astrology does not work in a simple way that astrologers say it works. That's what Robert Curry's research also found. But this research is pushing it even further, saying maybe there's some particular things, like Mars and Sagittarius, that are extroverted. If you were to take the planet in the sign that might be the most extroverted, arguably, it could be Mars and Sagittarius. There's a hint that there might be some truth to the astrology. We're building a model. We're checking so many possibilities. You can only really use this 0.05 cutoff if you have one strict hypothesis. We're not doing that. We're just modeling the data. We're searching. We're groping. We're trying everything we can to make sense out of the astrology. We finally found something. Maybe this is just showing if you're desperate enough, you'll find something that made sense. Or maybe it's a hint of something that really is there. And then this is again where I run it for 29 years or older, and we have only 94 people instead of 161. So I ran it twice to see what's going on, and I got almost the same exact value, so it didn't matter that much whether I cut off at age 29 or 31. Again, very close to the 0.04, in this case 0.05, very, very close. So clearly the older, if we remove the younger people, there is some indication that Mars and Sagittarius might have something to do with extroversion. I've done so many tests in so many ways. Personally, I'm skeptical. But if you're a hardcore believer in standard astrology, and I also, we're going to talk about it. We're going to need at least 3 parts to this series of videos. Our research does show that Sagittarius is extroverted and Aries and Leo are not. I have other research, I'll talk more about this later, that shows Aries and Leo are not extroverted, despite what astrologers think, but Sagittarius is. This confirms that. Okay, bottom line, there's some hint that possibly Mars in Sagittarius is extroverted. Maybe. It's possible. But the other signs, no. No. I mean, it just isn't. You can detect such subtle differences that there's just no support for the idea. I'll talk more about that and compare it to the other previous research. Okay. All right, so this is just some details that we run this analysis, and we compared to one control group. I didn't run all of them. It's just a lot of stuff to analyze. And here's a t-test to compare students with a control group. So here I compare 29 years or older with a control group on the fire, air, earth, and water. And there's, at best, we conclude that fire is mildly introverted. E minus means introverted, not extroverted. They're scoring minus on what's called the E scale, extraversion-introversion scale. So to summarize, when we use people who are 29 years or older, it's probably a random fluctuation, but maybe mildly introverted at best. You know, if you, from a strict statistical point of view, there's no support for the astrological theory, but you could say maybe with more research we could show that fire is slightly introverted and air is slightly introverted and water is slightly introverted, and those are very mildly, and earth is more extroverted. All of this contradicts astrological theory, saying that the results are just awful. They just contradict astrology completely. There's just random fluctuation. And here's the compare students, the introverts, and here we're seeing that fire prevents introversion. As I mentioned before, we're seeing that repeated in this study with 29 years or older, and so on. And air is slightly introverted, earth is average, and water slightly extroverted if you're an introvert. So if you're an introvert, this is saying that air would tend to make you even more introverted. On the right are the final conclusions. Final conclusions. Let me move this picture over here so you can read this. Conclusion from the 8 analyses: no support for the astrological hypothesis. At best, in other words, there's no support. There's no support for this idea that fire, earth, air, and water. If you want to take any little subtle hint of a finding, maybe air is introverted at best. Probably it's random fluctuation. But air is showing some tendency to be introverted, especially inclines introverted people to be extremely introverted. Opposite to what is said in astrology, but air is inclining to introversion. Fire avoids extremes, as I mentioned before. This is in order of highest confidence. We're most confident that air is introverted. Next most confident that fire avoids extremes, stays in the middle. Next most confident earth is either neutral or slightly extroverted, opposite to what we expect, and water is overall neutral. Perhaps, like fire, might avoid extreme introversion. So it doesn't fit. There's some slight indication that Mars and Sagittarius might incline to extroversion. Here's what Robert Curry found in his research. What he found is he had another score, the neuroticism score. The Eysenck Personality Questionnaire measures two things: extroversion and neuroticism. Unfortunately, the data that I'm using was collected a long time ago, and Professor David Fink, who collected the data, he was a professor of psychology, he was the chair of the department, he's retired, he's moved, and he's trying to find the records in his old computers where he kept it. The actual paper copies probably lost during the moves. So at present, I don't have the neuroticism scores. Robert does have it for the data he analyzed. And this was his conclusion. Fire is significantly extroverted, mildly neurotic. So E plus and N plus. With the new data, we're finding that fire is not extroverted. So this is why we repeat research with new data. And here is the breakthrough that Robert made, is that it's not as simple as astrologers say, because Air, he found, is mildly introverted, which is also what I found. So there is some consistency in the findings. We both find that air is inclining to introversion, opposite to what is expected. So there's a consistency. Maybe air is introverted. I am not finding with my research that Earth is introverted, so that's not confirmed. We are confirming air is introverted, and water is effectively neutral, which I also found. So two of his findings are repeated in my research. Air is introverted, and water is neutral. The others are not confirmed. I found fire stays in the middle, avoids extroversion, introversion, and earth is either neutral or slightly extroverted. So two of the elements are confirmed, two are not confirmed. So we need more research to investigate this. But the one thing that's very clear is that if there's any connection of astrology to extroversion and introversion, it's extremely subtle in terms of an observable behavior. Very subtle or very complex. Because with large sample sizes, 940 people, the statistics will pick up even a very, very slight difference, and they don't. So very consistent is this, a conclusion, clear, straightforward. There is no clear connection of zodiac signs to extroversion and introversion. Nothing we can support or find. If there is a connection, it's weak, subtle, and way more complex. And adding in these neuroticism scores that Robert had with his data, but I do not have with my data, can help make sense of the results. Another thing I want to emphasize is that we are modeling what we have observed to have real support for an idea. You have to have a completely unambiguous, clear hypothesis and confirm it. That's not what we're doing. We're looking at the data and we're trying to play with it to make sense of it. It's more exploratory than confirmatory. And I'm very strong about this, and not all of my fellow researchers seem to agree with me on this, but what I'm saying is that this research we're doing in astrology is largely exploratory. We didn't come in and say, oh, fire will be significantly extroverted and mildly neurotic. No. We looked at the data and found that that was the case. You can always make sense of data. We're just modeling and trying to come up with ideas. So most of our ideas, when you model, are going to be wrong. In the research I do, if you don't have a strict hypothesis test, your p-value has to be 0.001, 1 out of 1,000, for me to even get a little bit excited about it. We're looking at 0.01, 0.05, checking a bunch of different things, subtle differences. This is not interesting to me. It's not interesting in the sense that we've shown that there's no clear connection of extroversion and introversion to the zodiac signs. No support for that idea. You never know anything with research, but we're unable to find any support for it. Okay. So here's a summary. Let me move this back over here. Here's a summary of Robert's pioneering research, very important research to break the ice. And I also did some early research with Professor Fink on this, so we were two of the pioneers. I think there's been a bunch of other research as well. But anyway, some matter of pioneers, maybe exaggeration, but some of the early research on extroversion, introversion. So there's, again, what Robert found. And some of his conclusions is, this first one's very important, is that the categories of extroversion and introversion are not directly compatible with astrology. Astrology is not telling us extroversion and introversion directly. It's telling us some specific motivations. That's true. However, I would counter with this. At the beginning of the first video in this series of videos, the one that precedes this one, I read the interpretations from the website. There's large overlap with extroversion. If those meanings were there, it would be found, because with a large sample size, any even weak connection will be found. It wasn't found. By weak connection, I mean this. Suppose you look at a group of people and their average height is 5'9", 5 feet 9 inches tall. You look at another group of people and they're just slightly shorter, 5 feet 8 inches instead of 9 inches. They're only 1 inch shorter. When you have 940 people, you will be able to detect that, and it will be statistically significant. So that's called the effect size. Very tiny effect size will be detected, and we're not detecting it. We're not detecting it. We're getting contradictory results when we look at new data, because it's not there. You need to use 0.001 when you're modeling data to have any hope of repeating it. So, and he sees some other problems, self-reported, a desired self-image. However, maybe that's a subtle issue, but if there's any difference at all, if you ask somebody, would you rather go to the movies or stay home and read a book? If they're being biased by some kind of self-image or something, the Eysenck Personality Questionnaire is working very, very well. Test, retest, compared to other psychological diagnostics, compared to certain behavior patterns. So the astrology is not finding it. Okay, let's move on here to the next thing. So the conclusions. The final conclusions. The results of these studies do not agree with the results from other research. This suggests, in other words, Robert Curry found fire was extroverted with his research. In my research, I do not find fire. I find fire is introverted. What do we conclude from that? What we conclude is that with extremely small effect sizes, without a clear hypothesis at the beginning, with probability values of only 0.05 and 0.01, when you don't have a clear hypothesis, I don't expect it to get replicated. So it's just reinforcing the conclusion that we are unable to confirm the astrological theory. Perhaps, number one, Mars in Sagittarius is possibly it's extroverted. It's a little bit of wild guess, but some slight indications that could be researched. Fire signs maybe keep you from becoming highly introverted, extroverted. I think that's unlikely, because Robert's research found that they're introverted, not avoiding extremes. So that's really, if we really try to find anything meaningful in the data, this is what we could make a wild guess of, but there's really almost no support for this. The third thing is the most important one. There's another whole model. Don't use zodiac signs. Use these vibrational patterns. And I made videos about it, and then you find P less than 0.001. We replicated with new data when we did the bipolar disorder research. There's a whole new exciting theoretical framework for astrology that's giving us fantastic results. Instead of trying to get zodiac signs to work, to give us some measurable behavior, there's a whole other set of astrological variables that work. These are the conclusions over and over again. There are problems trying to confirm things like zodiac signs. Let me mention 4 other problems. Zodiac signs were found to be unrelated in the selection of marriage partners. I've made a series of videos on the selection of marriage partners, no connection to zodiac signs. That's stunning. Shocking. We cannot confirm zodiac signs with measurable results. Number 2, zodiac signs played almost no part in numerous quantitative studies where vibrational patterns were found to be effective. We did research on the greatest athletes, most famous rock and roll stars, gold prices, so many things. Vibrational patterns, strong confidence, some strong indications they work, can never find zodiac signs to work. Number 3, this is very important, and it has not gotten a lot of attention from the research journals because it's qualitative. Sometimes qualitative research gets overlooked because there's no number and there's no facts and figures. But we did extensive qualitative research on zodiac signs, extreme case sampling. And in that research, we found that Aries and Leo are not extroverted. That's another reason why people are not paying attention to research. It's contradicting their assumptions. But Sagittarius is extroverted, according to the research. At least a little bit. Not that much, but a little bit. But Aries and Leo, all that stuff that I read at the beginning of the first video in this series from the website, the CoStar website, those beautifully written interpretations, they're not true. They're just not true. There's something else going on. They show up as symptoms when people say Aries is a warrior. Actually, when we did the research, Aries is not a warrior. It'll happen once in a while, not in a physical sense. But there are attributes of Aries. Honesty, the striving for honesty, that was confirmed. So there's certain parts of the understanding of zodiac signs that were confirmed in the qualitative research, but most of the ideas were not supported, clearly not supported. And now when we do this quantitative research, what do we find? No support for Aries and Leo. It doesn't even surprise me that in some of those graphs, Taurus was more extroverted than Leo. Not surprising at all. When you look at the whole body of research, and we do apply these ideas with our clients, and for us, they work with our clients, even though other people see something different with their clients. That's the problem with anecdotal evidence. So, bottom line of what I'm trying to emphasize here is that there's many research studies that are reinforcing and confirming each other. This research confirms Aries and Leo are not extroverted. And this whole idea of fire and extroversion is derailing astrology. We have very strong confidence in this. Okay, number 4. We have a theory of zodiac signs. A very intricate, beautiful theory. They are structures in space created by something called Paisano periods and patterns in prime numbers. This goes way outside the realm of anything I can get into here. I've made over 700 videos total, dozens of them on this sacred geometry and this vibrational system and how it's related to things in physics like spin. And that analysis shows that fire is related to 11, and 11 vibrational astrology, is moving and dynamic. Air is related to 9. Initially, that doesn't make sense because 9 vibration has to do with building community. But air signs do communicate and they bring together. And both Robert's research and my research showed that air is slightly introverted, and it fits with 9 vibration. So Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius are about relating, connecting, holding together. So a lot of our ideas in astrology have been twisted through a simplified thought that air is the mind, this is mental, and mental goes out and connects and it's extroverted. No, it's mental in a way that has more to do with communication and bringing together to 9 vibe. And Earth is 13. 13 is something special. Earth is usually seen as more material, not special, not spiritual, grounded, stuck in the mud. But actually all zodiac signs are equally spiritual. And what 13 is doing is manifesting in concrete form something that precipitates out and becomes special. And so it's not surprising that Earth could be a little extroverted. What I'm saying is that the way astrology works is very different from what we were thinking. And one of the reasons why the research does not support the astrological theory is not always because astrology does not work. It does not work the way astrologers think it works. And water is related to 7, which is still. Okay, so our theory, our research, and our use with clients is building consistent, reinforcing understanding of astrology. And one of those conclusions is that zodiac signs do not produce obvious, measurable behavior very well. Vibrational patterns do. So when a lot of astrologers say you cannot put astrology under the microscope with all these statistics and stuff, yes, you can. And it works beautifully. Astrology really works, but it's a set of variables astrologers do not work. According to the research, according to the data, and according to our application of the data with clients as well. So conclusions, astrology is obsessed with zodiac signs? I mean, obviously, Even at when the professional organizations have conferences, you put your sun sign, your moon sign, your rising sign on your name tag. Signs. Research suggests that the impact of zodiac signs has little to do with measurable behaviors. It is a way of being that is difficult to measure. It's hard to measure zodiac signs. It can result in many different kinds of behaviors, so it's very hard to confirm them. There are other things like vibrational patterns that are not difficult to see how they behave, and that's exciting. And the zodiac signs are only mildly related to the traits and qualities that astrologers assign to them. Now, there's a radical statement, but Aries are not warriors. Leos are not. Actually, they tend to be shy more than dramatic. Dramatic is one of the more unusual possibilities. And so what we have is that astrology is stuck in anecdotal evidence and attachments to beliefs and unwilling to look at the new, exciting breakthrough information. The cynics of astrology respond to astrology that is prevalent. They're looking at these ideas, unable to confirm them. Our research, my research, and my colleagues also unable to confirm them, but opening a door to a new understanding. This is what happens. Imagine if science is the same way science was 100 or 500 years ago. It would just be stuck, and that's the case of astrology. I did this research on zodiac signs and introversion and extroversion to verify again if I might be wrong in dismissing so much of modern astrology. So we have to double check. I'm dismissing a lot of modern astrology. It's not being supported. So I look and look again. I listen to my colleagues. I retest. I implement their suggestions. And again, unable to support these ideas. So the last sentence here, the cynics of astrology are correct that there is no solid support for astrology. But this is primarily because astrology is stuck in history, tradition, and prior beliefs. Studying history, tradition, and prior beliefs is important. It's important to know where we came from. It's important to understand history. It's important to understand the country you live in, how it developed, where it came from, where it's heading. These things are very important. I'm not saying we shouldn't go back and do these things. And sometimes you'll uncover gems in there. But to keep repeating and using that fundamental ideas, and now there's a movement in astrology over the last few decades to go even further back and stay even more stuck when brand new doors are opening. So this work we're doing in whatever you want to call it, cosmic cybernetics or vibrational cosmobiology, is catching on with the academic community. And hopefully astrologers will eventually catch on to it as well. More conclusions. Robert Curry's research was a pioneering study that interpreted research of data that was collected by the astrology cynic Jeffrey Dean. He did it from an astrologer's point of view. He found some things that supported astrological theory, some things that did not agree with astrological theory. And he developed an elegant theory combining N scores with E scores. It was a pioneering research that showed astrology works differently in some ways from what was expected. My research comes in and shows it's even farther away from what's expected. As we do more research, we get more information, greater understanding. One research project develops on another. And in the last paragraph, a conclusion, apps like CoStar are this is important. What about these apps like CoStar? What about astrologers? I've been in the astrology community for many decades. I've been on professional organizations. I have a lot of good friends who are astrologers. And here's what I want to say. The professional astrologers, the people that develop apps like CoStar, all of the ones I know, they're well-intentioned. They're good people. They have open hearts. They want to do good. They're not in it just for the money, contrary to what some of the cynics say. Astrology to them appears to work. If you use only your personal assessment and your experience, you'll probably conclude that astrology works. It's very alluring. These mythic stories are so powerful. They're stories of the soul that we can all relate to. And you will periodically see confirmation. But combining personal assessment and experience with modern research methods reveals that astrology picks up on some possible symptoms of a process that is very different from those symptoms. So, finally, all of these well-intentioned astrologers, smart people, seeing how astrology works in their lives, by refusing to look at this breakthrough research and sticking only with the depth of their own perceptions and experience and that of their friends and colleagues, it actually causes great harm. That's my personal opinion. I'm not speaking as a scientist here, but just as a person observing what's going on. That when we fail to do the hard work of using modern research methods, and I'm rattling the stuff off of, I took only 31-year-old or 29-year-old, and I ran this study, that. This is dozens and dozens and dozens of hours creating what we call these R scripts and confirming them. It's rather tedious in detail, but it's the work that needs to be done. If you want to be a great piano player, you've got to sit there and practice and do that detailed stuff. Same thing in art, sciences, anything. So astrology's failing to take a mature view and do the hard work that needs to be done to confirm things outside of the scope of what we do. I'm not saying astrologers are lazy. They work very hard with their clients, but they're staying myopic in this narrow world of personal experience only and tradition. And when you open the door and you let in this information, wow, it revolutionizes the whole thing. So indications for future research. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move forward with the vibrational cosmobiology, the stuff we did with the bipolar disorder. I wrote a book. You can Google it. The Astrology of Bipolar Disorder, a Scientific Breakthrough. It is a scientific breakthrough. It's amazing. There's a whole new set of variables at work. Also, I recently made a video on the harm caused by astrology. When astrologers don't communicate with each other and they have different points of view. So I'm making a sincere attempt here to follow a path of understanding of the usual ideas of zodiac signs, address the criticisms and suggestions of my colleagues, and sort this out. We need to talk to each other and sort it out. So my specialization is in the vibrational cosmobiology, and that's where I'll focus because it's exciting. We're making discoveries and breakthroughs all the time. And I've got over 700 YouTube videos. We'll be coming out with more articles and books, and you can become a member and meet live. So you can get engaged with this new area of an evidence-based astrology. Okay, that's it. The R scripts and results of the research are available. If you go to, if you go to astrologydc.com, let me drag this into the captured area. Okay, so you go to astrologydc.com, click on links to YouTube videos, and then you'll get this index into a lot of the videos, not all of them. Let me drag this. Let me make this a little smaller. And if you scroll all the way down, it looks basically the same on your mobile device, your iPhone or Android phone or whatever. Just reformatted for the smaller screen. And you go down to research-controlled studies, and you scroll down, you'll see the R scripts for introversion, extraversion research. I have some new scripts for the latest research. I'll add those soon. They're not up there, but if you click here, it takes you to the link to the original R scripts before I did this additional research. And I'll add another button for the extended R scripts with the new data. So in research, we like to be able to replicate. We like to have the research procedures. And the data that I used is available in commercial software, the Sirius astrology software from Cosmic Patterns. So you would have to have that commercial software to get access to the data. But it is available. If it wasn't in a commercial program, I would make it available. But I obviously I can't do that, and I don't have any control over that. Okay, that's it, my friends. We're at 44 minutes, a little bit longer, but I did it in 2 parts. The update on the research of introversion and extroversion. I know it's tedious, it's a lot of detailed research stuff, but it's important for this reason. Zodiac signs just do not work the way that they are popularly understood to work. I highly recommend watching the 12 videos on the qualitative research we did. It's eye-opening, very revealing. And if you're a practicing astrologer, try opening your, let me put it this way. In your next consultations, try experimenting with what we found. Because my students, people we've trained using this, it's amazingly more accurate. Now that's subjective. But we have the data as well to confirm it. Our subjective experiences working with clients, and we have some pretty strict criteria that I show my students in my classes to evaluate things. We can clearly be wrong. We have ways to evaluate even personal experience, but the personal experience with the clients, the database research, they agree completely. It's beautiful and it gets better and better all the time. Okay, my friends, thank you very much for listening. God bless. Namaste.